A drunk man survived a 19-story fall in Russia.
Emergency services say the victim suffered serious head and spine injuries. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Ricky Matay.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation all set for increased traffic in NLEX SC-TEX. Philippines and Japan reaffirm partnership amid maritime tensions with China. Former U.S. President Donald Trump pleads not guilty to 34 felony counts. French President Emmanuel Macron says China plays a major role in achieving Ukraine peace. And P-pop powerhouse SB19 makes it to Best Modern Boy Bands list. The Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation is ready for the increased volume of vehicles in NLEX SC-TEX for a stress-free travel during this long holiday. Samantha Intal has the details.
The travel of more vehicles has already started on the North Luzon Expressway or NLEX towards various provinces for the long vacation of our fellow Filipinos. That's why the leadership of the Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation or MPTC has implemented intensified operations to ensure the comfortable and safe travel of motorists. NLEX Senior Traffic Manager Robin Ignacio says there are about 560,000 vehicles traveling based on 10 to 15% increase in traffic volume in NLEX SC-TEX and other expressways managed by MPTC. More than 1,500 traffic and toll lane management personnel are employed early on the expressways to provide assistance to motorists. The NLEX management reminds travelers to ensure that their vehicles and drivers are in good condition before traveling to avoid any problems. Among those who traveled early to avoid traffic were the family of Aling Magdalena and Mang Jaime Villalon, who were on their way to Pampanga, as well as Lolo Tito Orlate, who was on his way home to Pangasinan. However, they still encountered slow traffic when entering the expressway. Free towing services are available for Class 1 vehicles traveling on the expressway managed by MPTC from 6 a.m. on April 5, 2023 until 6 a.m. on April 11, 2023. The implementation of the Safe Trip Mo Sagot Ko Motorist Assistance Program has also started, and the MPTC operation is on high alert. The MPTC has once again encouraged more than 100 motorists to get RFID to ensure faster travel. Ignacio said that 70% of motorists have already adopted the RFID system, while the remaining 30% are still not prepared for RFID. Meanwhile, the Department of Transportation, or DOTR, reminds everyone to continue following health and safety protocols such as wearing face masks and washing hands. Aside from health protocols, DOTR also gave safety tips for those who left their homes during the long vacation. This includes locking all doors and windows of the house, ensuring that no household items can cause fire, turning off lights and unplugging appliances, and more. Samantha Intal for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Information and Communications Technology says there is no announcement yet if the SIM card registration will be extended. Madeline Villar Moratillo has the details.
The Department of Information and Communications Technology or DICT says SIM card registration is not yet extended. DICT Undersecretary Ana May Lamintillo reiterates the deadline for users to register their SIM online is still on April 26, 2023.
Wala pa now. Pinag-uusapan pero as of now, April 26 pa rin yung deadline. So, may kumakalat na extended na siya. It's not true. So, it's still being deliberated upon. So, it will be up to the national government whether to extend it or not.
Lamintillo also urged the public not to wait for the deadline, but one must take advantage of the long weekend to register their SIM. She says no one is exempted from the law. Even foreigners must register their local SIMs, which have a 30-day validity. Lamintillo also reminds the public to register in legitimate telecom sites to avoid being hacked. She asserts that failure to register will result in SIM card deactivation. However, Lamintillo explains telco companies will give a 2-day period to those who are not able to register until April 26. She says telco companies are also preparing for the SIM card registration deluge which can happen on the last 2 days before the deadline.
In fact, yung mga telcos natin allows for a 2-day period. After the April 26 deadline, hindi mo ma-register yung SIM card mo, meron kang 2-day period
To use it.
to go to your telco and say, I still want to use my number. And then they will reactivate it for you so long as you do the procedure. Kung kunwari naman, tinamad ka lang, na-miss mo yung 2-day period for reactivation of your old number, it will be permanently deactivated na.
Madeline Villar Moratillo for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Some senators are in Japan to raise issues on the West Philippine Sea, the employment status of Filipinos, and the Philippines' economic partnership with Japan. Mayan Corvera tells us more.
Some Philippine senators met with Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio where they discussed harassment cases of Filipinos in the West Philippine Sea and the ratified Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership with Japan. According to Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri, the meeting with Japanese leaders is part of the Philippine delegation's official parliamentary visit to Tokyo. In a statement, Zubiri said they visited Japan in recognition of the strategic partnership between the two countries and in adaptation to the global security situation, especially the continuous maritime tension in the West Philippine Sea. The senator added that it is timely to explore the visiting forces agreement of the two countries. They had a clearer understanding of the current defense and security issues faced by countries in Asia. Meanwhile, Senator Villanueva said that they also asked Japan's help in the employment plan so the Filipinos can have a job after finishing their education until they retire. Mayan Corvera for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. discusses the right sizing of the executive branch for upskilling and reskilling government employees. Meanwhile, the National Government Right Sizing Program or NGRP bill remains pending in Congress. J.D. Mahinay tells us more.
Ferdinand Marcos Jr. again discusses the NGRP bill in the sectoral meeting in Malacanang. He ordered to study the executive branch's present setup to organize. This includes the positions and the responsibilities that can be merged together. President Marcos clarifies that the government's right sizing does not aim to cut employees, but to improve the services and programs offered by the administration. This can be accomplished by the upskilling and reskilling of government employees. As part of it, functional shifts and modifications and organizational actions will be established based on the recommendation of the Committee on Right-Sizing the Executive Branch, or CREB. According to House Bill number 7240, Section 6, or the National Government Right-Sizing Act, the President may organize the operation of the executive branch's agencies. Meanwhile, positions in teaching professions in schools, hospital-allied medical items and other medical facilities, military personnel, uniformed personnel, Government-owned and controlled corporations and government financial institutions are not included in the NGRP. The administration strives to organize the government positions while waiting for the Senate to pass its own version of the NGRP bill in Congress. JD Mahinay for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has approved the creation of a joint and special task force following the killing of Negros Oriental Governor Roel de Gamo. Under Administrative Order Number 6, the Task Force de Gamo is directed to prevent the spread and escalation of violence anywhere in the country and maintain peace and order in Negros Island. However, the president emphasizes the task force shall give due regard to the fundamental civil and political rights of the people. The president signed the AO on April 6. The Presidential Communications Officer, PCO, says Interior Secretary Benhur Abalos will head the task force with Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla as co-chairperson. Armed Forces Chief of Staff General Andres Centino and Director Menardo de Lemos of the National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, will both serve as task force commanders. The Department of Social Welfare and Development is directed to provide emergency relief assistance to the victims' families, while the Department of Health is tasked to conduct psychological rehabilitation to affected individuals. Prior to the issuance of the AO, the Philippine Army deployed a battalion of soldiers in Negros Oriental. The AFP assures residents that the province will not be militarized.
The Department of Justice is studying other significant cases to file against Congressman Arnolfo Teves Jr. More details from Celine Dorado.
Justice Secretary Crispin Remulla insists that the Department of Justice, or DOJ, is objective in handling cases despite the allegations of bias from Teves's camp regarding the Degamo killing complaints. Remulla previously identified Congressman Arnolfo Teves Jr. as the mastermind behind the killing of Governor Roel Degamo.
Objective in what we do here. It's not a question of impartiality. It's a question of objectivity on whether we are saying the truth, whether we believe we're serving justice. And it is not our job to be judges. Our job is to prosecute. That's what we do here at the DOJ.
Remulla is not concerned with Teves's threat of non-participation in DOJ hearings, as the law will still take its course with or without him. The DOJ is currently studying a significant case to file against Teves based on the evidence and testimony they have.
Cases na pinag-aaralan na ipa-file that will be very significant. So, patience lang. We will do what can be done with what we have, and we have the information that we have, the evidence that we have. There are cases that we can file that are not yet in the menu of cases that have been filed.
The DOJ will have a meeting next week to finalize the possible cases to be filed against Teves. Celine Dorado for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office Head Fernando Lopez says there was no oil spill found in the waters of Coron, Palawan that came from the MT Princess Empress. Lopez's statement came after his team held patrols from Monday to Tuesday. He clarifies there is still a possibility of an oil slick. He explains big waves hinder the team, and so they had a hard time checking for the oil spill. The local government has requested an aerial survey to see if the oil spill reached their town. Coron is one of the top tourist destinations in the Philippines. It is known for its limestone karst landscapes, beautiful beaches, and coves. The University of the Philippines Maritime or Marine Science Institute previously cited a satellite image from the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that there is a possible oil slick of 12 kilometers away from Coron. The leak was detected with a length of 19 kilometers and a width of 3 kilometers.
The Philippine inflation rate slowed down in March with 7.6%. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, says the March inflation was 10% lower compared to the 8.6% in February. PSA Undersecretary and National Statistician Dennis Mapa cited the decrease in the prices of food and services as the primary reason for the slowdown in the country's inflation rate. Mapa also stated that the easing in the prices of food and non-alcoholic beverages, as well as in transportation, and the sluggish movement of prices of housing, water, and electricity contributed to the decrease in inflation rate. Mapa clarified that the average inflation rate in the country from January 2023 to March was 8.3%. Based on PSA's record, the inflation rate in January was 8.7%, and in February it was 8.6%. The March inflation rate falls within the projection of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas of 7.4 to 8.2%, but it is generally higher than the government's target range of 2 to 4%.
The Supreme Court has announced that the results of the 2022 bar examinations will be released on April 14. In a notice, Associate Justice Alfredo Benjamin Caguioa said bar results can be accessed on the Supreme Court's website after a special unbanked session next Friday. Bar passers who garner the 30 highest total averages and law schools that obtain the 5 highest bar passers percentages will also be announced next week. Caguioa said bar passers are advised to await announcements regarding further details on the clearance procedure, as well as the oath-taking and roll signing on May the 2nd, 2023. He added bar candidates who were conditionally admitted to take the 2022 bar examinations and have passed the test will be allowed to take oath after submitting requisite documents within the period previously given to them. Over 9,000 law graduates finished the bar examinations held in November of 2022. Last year's bar examinations were also the second digitalized and regionalized exams since the COVID-19 pandemic started in 2020.
Coming up, ex-President Donald Trump pleads not guilty to 34 felony counts. NATO ignoring Ukraine's alliance application. And Rights Commissioner says over 730,000 Ukrainian child refugees in Russian regions. Stay tuned for more stories from all around the globe when we return.
This portion is brought to you by Final Match Security and Investigation Agency.
Masasabi niyo ba na nagbago na ang panlasa ng Pinoy pagdating sa kung ano ang kanilang panonoorin?
We evolve as a person. So, nag-iiba rin yung preferences natin.
The TV industry is dying at online na raw ang magiging preferred medium natin.
Online, meron din yung mga snackable videos. Yan ang nakakaagaw ng oras sa panonood ng TV at sa panonood mo online.
Nabawasan na ba ang kalidad ng mga programa at pelikulang gawa ng Pinoy?
Sadly, outside of the MMFF for this year, mahihina po ang mga box office ng mga movies natin.
Ano na ba ang hilig panoorin ng mga kababayan natin ngayon? May say-say pa ba? Mag-reality check time.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. A scene that has never happened before in the U.S. unfolded yesterday in New York. A former U.S. president faced criminal charges. On the way to the Manhattan courthouse, Donald Trump himself described the situation as surreal. Our Net 25 correspondent Joan Soriano was there in front of Trump Towers as New Yorkers gathered to catch a glimpse of the former POTUS. Here's her report.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump was arraigned in New York on 34 felony counts in the first ever criminal trial of an American president. Trump arrived in New York on Monday afternoon and spent the night at Trump Tower in Midtown before his set court appearance on Tuesday afternoon. Trump pleaded not guilty on all counts inside the packed Manhattan courtroom. The charges were all Class E felonies related to falsifying business records with intent to defraud or conceal other crimes.
Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are.
This includes hush money payments made ahead of the 2016 presidential election to porn star Stormy Daniels, to a former Trump Tower doorman, and to a former Playboy model. After the historic arraignment, Trump flew back to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, where he gave a statement.
I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. Even people that aren't big fans have said it. They said this is not the right thing to do. It's an insult to our country, as the world is already laughing at us for so many other reasons.
The trial could begin as early as January 2024, just as primary elections begin for the next presidential race. At Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan, Joan Soriano for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
President Joe Biden was paying little attention to the arraignment of his predecessor, Donald Trump, according to the White House. Press Secretary Karen Jean-Pierre says Biden will catch part of the news of the day when he has a moment, but this is not a focus for him. The sole public event on Biden's schedule Tuesday was a meeting with advisors on emerging artificial intelligence technology.
This is not something that is a focus for him. He is going to focus on things like making sure that we continue to lower prices for the American people.
Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen arrived in Los Angeles and met with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. People gathered in front of a hotel where Tsai is expected to stay during the visit. Some waved at Chinese flags and shouted "One China" in protest, while others held banners to welcome her. Taipei enjoys strong bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress and has grown closer to Washington under Tsai's leadership. China earlier said McCarthy was playing with fire by meeting with Tsai. Xi Jinping's government insisted the meeting seriously violates the One China principle.
The United States, South Korea, and Japan will reportedly meet to consider ways to respond to alleged provocations by North Korea. The U.S. State Department said President Joe Biden's special representative for North Korea, Sung Kim, would attend Friday's nuclear talks. Washington also argued that ties with Japan and South Korea are critical to strengthening regional security. Pyongyang repeatedly conducted weapon tests in retaliation for Washington and Seoul's military drills. Kim Jong-un's government asserted the exercises are a rehearsal for an invasion.
French President Emmanuel Macron has embarked on a 4-day trip to China to strengthen trade relations with Beijing. Here's Prince Limonero to tell us more.
French President Emmanuel Macron is currently on a 4-day trip to China to strengthen economic and global ties between the two nations. Macron's state visit to China is expected to focus on several key areas of cooperation, including economic ties, climate change, and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. In addition to bilateral talks, the French president will also meet with the Chinese business leaders and tour several key Chinese cities. Macron's visit to China is seen as a crucial opportunity to improve economic ties between France and China, which have been strained in recent years over trade and investment issues. During his visit, Macron is expected to raise concerns about human rights abuses in China, including the situation in Xinjiang and Hong Kong. Despite the concerns, Macron has stressed that the trip is aimed at building a mutually respectful relationship with China rather than criticizing its
French President Emmanuel Macron asserts China plays a major role in finding a path to peace in Ukraine. He also vows to work with China in this shared responsibility for peace and stability in Ukraine.
La Chine a réaffirmé son attachement à la Charte des Nations Unies. L'intégrité territoriale, la souveraineté des nations en font partie. Et je crois que les défendre, c'est aussi cheminer ensemble et essayer de trouver un chemin de paix. Et la Chine, justement, a proposé un plan de paix. Nous l'avons salué. Est-ce que nous nous y retrouvons dans son intégralité? Non. Néanmoins, il a un intérêt, il montre une volonté de s'engager sur la résolution du conflit. Et donc, s'il ne s'agit pas d'un plan de paix, il s'agit bien d'une volonté d'avoir une responsabilité, d'essayer de bâtir un chemin vers la paix et, je l'espère, de pouvoir participer à des initiatives utiles à la population ukrainienne.
France, together with the United States, hopes to obtain from China a contribution to the global effort of North-South solidarity.
Sources say NATO is ignoring Ukraine's application over the threat that it may escalate the conflict with Russia. However, some NATO officials are preparing closer relations with Ukraine as an alternative. In February 2022, Moscow cited NATO's expansion into Ukraine. This made Russia perceive NATO's presence as a threat to its national security, a key reason for launching its military operations against Ukraine. In 2019, Kyiv intended to join NATO and formally applied for membership last September.
Russia's Children's Rights Commissioner Maria Lvova-Belova says since February 2022, Russian regions have received more than 5 million refugees from Ukraine and the Donbas Republic. She says more than 730,000 of them are children. Lvova-Belova says the majority of these children came with their legal representatives, their parents, guardians, or trustees. She says it is important for Russia to make sure they are safe and healthy. Also to give them the opportunity to learn and to give them everything they need as children. She says aside from placing children in foster care, the commissioner's team also works to reunite blood families with their children. The UN Human Rights Council has demanded that Russia provide access to and information about Ukrainian children and other civilians forcibly transferred to territory under its control.
Russian investigators charged Daria Trepova with terrorism over a bombing attack in St. Petersburg. The blast killed a prominent military blogger and wounded dozens of people. From Moscow, Russia, RT News correspondent Che Bose tells us more.
Osmani court in central Moscow where Daria Trepova has now actually been charged under the terrorism legislation here in Russia. She was rushed here earlier today amid scenes of massive media interest in this case from abroad and from Russia, of course. She'd been brought here from St. Petersburg to face her first court appearance, and they have now charged her under terrorism legislation. And there has been innumerable stories about her involvement. We've seen a lot of evidence of her involvement in this assassination and a terrorist act in St. Petersburg where 40 innocent people were injured and one Mr. Vladlin was killed. So we've 1 dead and 40 injured, and some of them are now seriously injured. And we believe that Ms. Trepova is still in the court behind us, having been charged under the Terrorism Act. We expect her detention to be extended while this investigation, we imagine, will extend and prolong as we go forward. And of course, we'll keep you updated as we can, Peter.
Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim proposes an Asian Monetary Fund, or AMF. He asserts Malaysia has no reason to continue relying on the US dollar to attract investments into the country. He says investment negotiations between Malaysia and other countries should use the country's currency and the currency of the states involved. Anwar believes the AMF will strengthen the buffer against economic crises. Japan first proposed the AMF in 1997 during the early stages of the Asian financial crisis. But the idea was met with opposition from certain Asian countries and the G7. There were concerns that the AMF may undermine the IMF and create divisions between Asia and North America.
Reserve Bank of India says Malaysia can now trade in the Indian rupee and other existing modes of settlement. This follows the Reserve Bank of India's decision to allow the settlement of international trade with the currency last July 2022. This aims to facilitate the growth of global trade and support the interests of the trading community in the Indian rupee. Meanwhile, the India International Bank of Malaysia opened a special rupee Vostro account in India to align with the trade.
Up next, 1 in 6 people globally is affected by infertility by World Health Organization. United States kills a senior ISIS leader. And a drunk man survives a 19-story fall. Stay tuned. We have more news coming your way when Mata ng Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders, Quezon City Motor Vehicle Inspection Center.
Susunod sa Counterpoint, silipin natin ang kalagayan ng automotive industry sa bansa.
Ang local automotive industry natin, masasabi nating pillar ng ating ekonomiya.
Usapang girl power.
It's too bad for them.
Too bad for them na
nagkaroon nagkakompetensya sila na babae.
Kasama si Attorney Sal Panelo at Maria Fe Perez Agudo, President and CEO of Changan Motor Philippines Incorporated. Sa Counterpoint, tuwing Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi, dito sa Net 25. Natagpuan na ni Attorney Sal si Cecil.
Alam mo, matagal ka nang hinahanap ng mga staff dito kasi yung pangalang Cecil, yun ang naging palaging nababanggit ko sa mga guest ko.
A strike to acknowledge Aboriginal Australians in the nation's constitution received a major hit on Wednesday. The Conservative Opposition Party says it would fight over the proposed reforms. The centre-left government of Australia wants to change the constitution to endorse the Indigenous population. In order for that to happen, the public needs to agree on a proposal to hand Aboriginal people the rights to discuss it in a binding referendum late this year. Opposition leader Peter Dutton is resoundingly against the proposal, believing it to be divisive and lacking detail. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has made an emotional call for voters to back the referendum in support of Aboriginal people. The referendum is a crucial step in empowering the indigenous population and bridging the gap between them and other Australians. The results will be key in determining whether the country has the confidence to embrace its history and support the indigenous people who have faced countless years of discrimination.
In Australia, Terence Kelly was sentenced to 13 years and 6 months in prison after being found guilty of abducting 4-year-old Cleo Smith. Kelly confessed to the kidnapping of the little girl, which happened in the early hours of October 16, 2021. The court reports that Cleo Smith was kept in a bedroom with a door that was lockable from the outside. She was trapped for 18 days. Kelly told the court that he turned up at the radio to drown out the noise of Cleo pleading for her mother. Cleo's disappearance prompted a nationwide police search. The state government offered a $1 million Australian dollar reward for any information on her whereabouts. Police collected evidence for over 2 weeks, including interviews, security footage, phone data, and tips from hundreds of people. Meanwhile, the parents made frantic pleas to locate their missing child. Eventually, the information pointed to a single-story house in the coastal town of Carnarvon, about 73 kilometers south of the campsite where she went missing. Kelly told police he felt guilty for taking Cleo and had not been planning to keep her. Cleo's parents said their lives had been ripped apart by the permanent trauma of what Kelly had done. They further said that they hope their little girl can lead the best life in the future.
India dismisses China's attempts to rename places in the northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi says Arunachal Pradesh has been and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. Bagchi's comments came after a report said China had renamed 11 places along a disputed Himalayan border region in the state. China continues to stake claim on the whole of Arunachal Pradesh, calling it South Tibet. Beijing has not yet commented on India's recent statement.
Iraq's federal government and the Kurdistan Autonomous Region signed an accord to allow Kurdish oil exports to resume. The resumption will be through Turkey after exports were halted 10 days earlier. The agreement was signed in Baghdad with Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani and Kurdish Premier Masroor Barzani. The deal is described as temporary. This, however, signals the end of independent oil exports by northern Iraq's Kurdish regional government. It also marks a clear limit to its autonomy. The agreement comes 2 days after Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and several other major oil exporters announced a sharp reduction in their production from May.
Almost 2 months after a deadly earthquake hit Turkey and Syria, businesses in the quake-struck city of Kahramanmaraş have reopened. One shopkeeper beams Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan handled the earthquake situation well. As the presidential election nears, Erdogan's performance is at stake. Turkey is divided as some still blame Erdogan's stuttering response to the earthquake victims. Others continue to trust Erdogan and say no government can be perfect. The situation, according to the opposition, is quite challenging and complicated. They say they will prefer to focus on helping the survivors rather than engage in direct campaigning.
The World Health Organization reports that 1 in 6 people worldwide is affected by infertility in their lifetime. The health agency says this shows that the need for affordable, high-quality fertility care must be more accessible. Rosel Feria tells us more.
Infertility does not discriminate. This is what WHO Chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says, as new estimates show large numbers of people are affected by infertility in their lifetime. WHO says infertility is a disease of the male or female reproductive system. It is not achieving a pregnancy after 12 months or more of regular unprotected sexual intercourse. Another concern is that infertility can cause significant distress, stigma, and financial hardship. These affect people's mental and psychosocial well-being. WHO says after seeking treatment for infertility, millions of people face catastrophic healthcare costs. WHO warns that this makes the disease a major equity issue and the medical poverty trap for those affected. WHO's Dr. Pascal Alotti says better policies and public financing can significantly improve access to treatment. They can protect poorer households from further falling into poverty. In Washington, D.C., Rosel Feria for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
U.S. agricultural entrepreneurs meet in Havana to examine business opportunities in Cuba. This in hopes of taking advantage of Washington's interest in supporting the private sector on the island. 14 representatives of U.S. companies involved in rice, soybean, and egg production are attending the 4th edition of the Cuba-U.S. Agricultural Conference. Paul Johnson of the United States Agriculture Coalition for Cuba says the shortage of food in the island country is something that can be fixed.
And we have to look for the opportunities that exist and keep on developing. I keep repeating myself in the private sector, but we need to go back to our government and here in Cuba and insist that the private sector is a path forward to development.
U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM, announced that they have successfully killed the senior ISIS leader Khalid Aid Ahmad al-Jaburi in Syria on Monday. According to CENTCOM, al-Jaburi was responsible for planning attacks on Europe and developing the leadership structure of ISIS in Turkey. Sources reveal that al-Jaburi was killed in a drone strike in the rebel-held northwest of Syria. CENTCOM emphasizes that no innocent civilians were harmed during their mission. They add that ISIS remains a significant threat not just in the region but beyond as well. However, this successful assault is expected to disrupt the group's ability to plot external attacks. Despite losing many territories in Iraq and Syria, ISIS continues to be a persistent threat. In February, the United Nations released a report stating that the group's threat to international peace and security remains high and has even increased and in around conflict zones where it has a presence. With an estimated number of 5,000 to 7,000 supporters and fighters, the group's members continue to grow. Last year, ISIS appointed a new leader, Abu al-Hussein al-Husseini al-Quraishi, after the previous leader was killed. The fight against ISIS continues, but CENTCOM's successful mission has dealt a significant blow to the group's operations.
3 inmates died in Ecuador in the latest burst of rioting in its maximum security prison system. The SNAI agency overseeing the prison system says the violence broke out at La Roca prison in the port city of Guayaquil. Guayaquil is a growing nerve center in the global drug trade where a state of emergency was declared just 3 days earlier. SNAI says after the fighting erupted, authorities activated security protocols. Prison agents, police, and the military regained control of the prison. The maximum security facility has a capacity for some 150 inmates and was housing 23 prisoners at the time. Most of the inmates are leaders of drug trafficking gangs engaged in a bloody struggle for power inside the prison and on the streets. A state of emergency has also been declared in the neighboring districts of Duran and Samborondon and in Santa Elena and Los Rios provinces.
A drunk man survived a 19-story fall after landing on a parked car in Voronezh, Russia. Investigators report the drunk man may have jumped from his unit. In the video that you see now, the man was seen able to stand with the help of rescuers. Emergency services say the man was taken to hospital and he suffered from injuries to his head and spine. Some reports claim that the man continued to sing while being taken by the ambulance.
Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant revealed heavy damage to its foundation and significant debris. Tokyo Electric Power, or TEPCO, released a series of video clips from a robotics survey inside Fukushima Daiichi plant's Reactor 1. The videos show damaged concrete walls with debris piled roughly 50 centimeters high. It was a daunting task ahead to decommission the plant after it was hit by a huge tsunami triggered by a magnitude 9 earthquake. The new video comes as local residents voice worries about the safety of the precarious structure in an earthquake-prone region. Fukushima Governor Masao Uchibori pressed TEPCO to conduct an earthquake resistance evaluation for the facility to ensure the safety of the project to dismantle the plant. TEPCO has said it will conduct a seismic resistance survey in a few months, but previous surveys have indicated that the facility remains relatively stable.
Coming right up, Johnson & Johnson offers $9 billion settlement in talcum powder lawsuits. Bernard Arnault is Forbes' richest man for 2023. And P-pop powerhouse SB19 included in Best Modern Boy Bands list. Catch the latest in business, sports, and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will be back. Richard Branson's Virgin Orbit has filed bankruptcy and will sell the business. Virgin Orbit suffered a major mishap when an attempt to launch the first rocket ended in failure. The company had organized the mission with the UK Space Agency and Cornwall Spaceport to launch 9 satellites into space. Last month, Virgin Orbit suspended operations for several days while it held funding negotiations and explored strategic opportunities. But the company told employees that the operations would cease for the foreseeable future. The California-based company said last week it was laying off 85% of its employees due to its inability to secure sufficient funding. Founded by Branson in 2017, the firm developed a new and innovative method of launching satellites into orbit while successfully launching 33 satellites into their precise orbit.
Johnson & Johnson has proposed a settlement of nearly $9 billion to resolve thousands of lawsuits. This over allegations that their talcum powder products caused cancer. The settlement offer is the latest effort by the company to resolve litigation that has been ongoing for years. The lawsuits claim that Johnson & Johnson's talc-based products contain asbestos and cause ovarian cancer and mesothelioma, a rare cancer that affects the lining of the lungs and other organs. The company has consistently denied these claims and maintains that their talc products are safe and asbestos-free. The proposed settlement would resolve more than 25,000 lawsuits in the United States alone. The company has already paid billions of dollars in damages in previous talc-related lawsuits. It has seen a significant decline in sales of its talc products. Johnson & Johnson's proposal is subject to approval by the court overseeing the litigation. It remains to be seen whether or not it will be accepted.
25 richest people in the world are worth a total of $2.1 trillion, according to Forbes, poorer by $200 billion from last year's list. Bernard Arnault, magnate of the luxury goods Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, and Tiffany Co., has become richer by $53 billion, which has vaulted him to the top. The 74-year-old French businessman has a net worth of $211 billion. Twitter CEO Elon Musk sits at the number 2 spot with $180 billion. And Jeff Bezos, after Amazon's shares crashed by 38%, places third with $114 billion. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, businessman Manny Villar remains the richest Filipino, worth $8.6 billion. Villar is the chairperson of one of the country's biggest mall operators, Vista Malls. He ranked 232nd place, more than 100 ranks higher than his last year's standing. Behind him is sports mogul Enrique Razon with a net worth of $7.3 billion, ranking at 312. And the third richest Filipino is San Miguel Corporation CEO Ramon Ang with an estimated net worth of $3.4 billion.
A franchising group is eyeing a 12 to 15% growth in the industry in the Philippines, boosting the local economy. Elijah Villanueva tells us more.
The Philippine Franchise Association has announced that it will host the World Franchise Council and Asia Pacific Franchise Confederation meetings this year. The country will again be the center stage of global franchising this year as it hosts the World Franchise Council, or WFC, and Asia Pacific Franchise Confederation, or APFC, meetings, expected to attract industry leaders from over 40 economies. These two international meetings will cap year-long activities being lined up by the Philippine Franchise Association, or PFA, highlighted by the highly anticipated 4-in-1 Franchise Asia Philippines 2023 event. Franchise Asia Philippines 2023 carries the theme Fun, Friendship, Franchising and will have 4 components: the International Conference on June 7 and 8, the International Franchise Expo, recognized as Asia's grandest from October 27 to 29, the 2 Certified Franchise Executive, or CFE, program on June 5 and 6, and seminars and other learning sessions for aspiring franchisors, franchisees, and entrepreneurs. With the theme Franchising Fast Forward, the conference will bring together a powerhouse cast of speakers and thought-provoking sessions for another extremely exciting and enriching learning experience, designed to further professionalize the industry and strengthen the sector's global competitiveness and sustainability. Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno will keynote the international conference happening at the SMX Convention Center, Manila. The International Franchise Expo, on the other hand, will showcase about 1,000 foreign and local franchise brands in the food, retail, and service sector. Utilizing the entire SMX Convention Center, the expo is expected to welcome more than 50,000 visitors looking for fresh business opportunities via the franchising route. PFA Chairperson Cheryl Quintana said growth will come from new concepts being launched by new entrepreneurs, as well as the expansion of successful brands as they move into new territories. This growth can also come from new foreign brands entering the Philippines for the first time.
Philippine Franchise Association has been very active in terms of supporting, attending different expos overseas. So we are, the PFA is now a current secretariat of the Asia Pacific Franchise Confederation. So that helps us also in terms of doing exchanges, best practices, and learning also from other neighboring countries. and seeing also the potential. Kasi sometimes they just don't know that these brands, for example, may be just concentrating on particular territory.
Elijah Villanueva for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United Kingdom has showcased its independent video games at the London Games Festival 2023. From London, England, Lee Lance Valdos files this report.
Video game developers, investors, and members of the public gathered at the London Games Festival ahead of the Gaming BAFTA Awards. This year, a number of independent games, including Citizen Sleeper, a game made by one person, have been nominated alongside multi-million-dollar titles. Michael French, the festival's director, emphasized that if an independent studio wins BAFTA, that is a massive validation of their efforts. French also said that independent developers have to do a lot more sometimes than bigger budget games. In October 2022, the Mayor of London renewed his commitment of £1 million to Games London, the festival's organisers, with the UK now being home to the largest cluster of game studios in Europe. Games London has one mission, which is to make London the games capital of the world. Gareth Damian Martin, the developer of Citizen Sleeper, a sci-fi role-playing game based on their experiences of London's gig economy and one nominated for 4 BAFTAs, explains his thoughts about indie games. London Games Festival kicked off on the 29th of March and will finish on the 8th of April. Reporting here from London, United Kingdom, I am Lee Lance Valdos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
P-pop powerhouse SB19 made it to the top 20 best modern-day boy bands list of Mojo, a Canadian entertainment YouTube channel that has more than 25 million followers. Colleen Tenorio tells us more.
The 5-member boy group SB19 was included in Miss Mojo's YouTube channel's ranking of best guy groups that rose to fame after the year 2000. This milestone is a proof of the P-pop group's domination in the international music and entertainment landscape. SB19 is the only Filipino act to enter the rank 20. The boy group was called an up-and-coming boy band, which is eager to represent P-pop in the international scene. Miss Mojo described SB19 as incredibly talented and said that the group is also going along with a wide variety of musical stylings and sensibilities to form a wholly unique sound. In the more than 20-minute video, Miss Mojo pegged SB19 as trailblazers for modern Filipino music. The P-pop idols first rose to fame with their first single, Go Up, back in 2019. The SB19 was also included as one of the favorite boy bands of all time last July 2022 based on the American fashion magazine Teen Vogue. Miss Mojo's list was led by K-pop supergroup BTS, English-Irish pop band One Direction, and American pop rock trio Jonas Brothers. The boy group's members Pablo, Josh, Tel, Ken, and Justin debuted as SB19 last October 2019. A few of their hit songs include Bazinga, Mapa, WYAT, and Alab. The group's WYAT or Where You At tour just ended recently, wherein they performed in Singapore, New York, Dubai, and Los Angeles. Colleen Tenorio for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
And for your midweek motivation, here's a quote from American author Wayne Dyer. You cannot always control what goes on outside, but you can always control what goes on inside.
And of course, a strong resolve is always the answer.
And I agree with that. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Ricky Matay.
And I am Nina Richielago Flores. Please stay tuned for tonight's episode of Counterpoints with attorney Salvador Panelo and CEO of Changan Motor Philippines, Maria Fe Perez Agudo. This is Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.